Welcome to the deep dive. Thanks for bringing this report on Sindhudurg to the table. It looks fascinating.
It really is. A lot going on there.
Yeah, so today we're going to take a deep plunge into this part of Maharashtra. It seems like it's really at a turning point. We're looking at its development path and, crucially, what that means for real estate there.
Exactly. And the source material you've got, it's pretty thorough. It covers the history, who's involved, the economic changes, the big tourism angle, and then, how that all feeds into the property market.
Right. So our mission here is basically to unpack this report, pull out the key takeaways, connect the dots for you, and help understand what's really driving things on the ground in Sindhudurg.
Getting past the headlines, understanding the why.
Precisely. Okay, so let's start at the beginning with the foundation the report talks about. How did this all get started?
Well, it's interesting because the report points out that Sindhudurg, being a tourist spot, isn't exactly new. It was officially declared a tourism district way back in 1997.
97? Wow, okay, so that designation kind of set the direction early on.
Yeah, it signaled the potential, even decades ago.
And the sources give us some, baseline figures from back then.
They do. Around 1999-2000, the per capita income was apparently about 47,183 rupees.
Yeah.
And by 2009, groundwater development was still fairly low, around 27.7%. Just snapshots.
Okay. And then there's census data from 2011.
Right. Population around 850,000 then. What's interesting is the literacy rate was already pretty high, over 85%, even higher in urban spots.
And a high sex ratio, too, favoring females. Plus, about 40% working population participation.
Yeah, so you see this foundation of, human potential there, even if the economy was more traditional back then.
The report also mentions a 2012 land use study, gives a picture of the land situation, and then that move towards online property registration, ISRITA, starting around 2015.
Yes, that's a key step for transparency. Digitizing land records, tying them to property cards later on.
Yeah.
That builds confidence for investment, which is a recurring theme.
Makes sense.
And coming back to tourism, that Swadesh Darshan scheme funded a coastal circuit project for Sindhudurg in 2015-16. The report says that one's actually finished, physically complete.
So concrete steps were being taken based on that early tourism district idea?
Definitely.
But now, this is where the report suggests things really kicked into high gear, the infrastructure revolution.
This is the really exciting part, yeah. The game changers, as the sources call them. Big connectivity projects.
Right. First up, Sindhudurg Airport, Chiki Airport, operational since October 2021. Built specifically for tourism and jobs, right?
Correct. And the report even mentions FLY 91 boosting flights to Pune soon 5 times a week. So it's actively being used and expanded.
But then there's the Embo Pay airport effect. That's in North Goa, but the report says it's having a huge impact on Sindhudurg.
Huge. Repeatedly called a game changer. The sources directly link it to property price jumps in parts of Sindhudurg, anywhere from 25% up to maybe 40%.
Wow, 25 to 40% linked to an airport outside the district itself.
It's striking, isn't it? It suggests Pooper is more than just flights. It's like this major anchor, fundamentally revaluing nearby land, just because it's now closer to this big hub.
Even before all the other development around MOPA, like casinos or whatever, gets going.
Exactly. The spillover effect is a big part of the story in the report.
Okay, what else? The Konkan Expressway.
The Mumbai-Goa Coastal Highway. Reportedly almost done, like 95% by early 2025, maybe fully complete by mid-2025.
And that's not just faster travel from Mumbai?
No, the sources call it a development corridor. It connects all these smaller towns and villages along the coast, opening them up.
Makes sense. And ports, are they leveraging the sea access too?
They are. Plans mentioned for expanding Redaport, significantly big investment there, and developing a new greenfield port at Vijayadurg. So maritime trade is definitely in the picture.
Plus that Ro-Ro ferry service planned from Mumbai to Mulvan.
Yeah, anticipated around May 2025, according to the sources. Another way to get people, and maybe their cars, right into the tourist areas.
So taking all this together, air, road, sea. The report's clear. Sindhudurg is just becoming way more accessible.
Fundamentally changing the equation. Distance is less of a barrier. And the report frames this connectivity as the key engine driving everything else.
Which logically leads to the economic shifts. The sources talk about moving away from just farming, fishing, mining.
Towards more industry, and especially tourism, diversification.
And the economic data seems to back that up, GDP figures?
Yeah, the gross district domestic product numbers show a clear jump. Starting from, say, just under 9,000 crore rupees in FY 2019-20.
Okay.
The report shows really strong growth in the next 2 years, like 15% annual growth in FY 2021, then over 21% FY 21-22, measured at constant prices to show the real increase.
That's significant growth.
It is. By FY 21-22, the current price GDP was over 12,500 crore. It did slow down a bit in FY 22-23 to around 7% constant price growth, but still positive. The trend is definitely up.
And what's driving that growth, according to the report?
It's a mix. There's the planned Adali Pharma Hub by MIDC, focus on non-polluting industries, local jobs, big push for MSMEs too, small businesses.
Like that technology center planned.
Exactly. 182 crore investment focusing on engineering, food processing, and a Nairbird seeing potential for like 900 crore in credit for MSMEs, so support for local enterprise.
And tourism obviously keeps coming up.
Absolutely. Called a cornerstone, a catalyst, plus the infrastructure enabling it all. And government schemes like One District, One Product, supporting things like cashews.
The report mentions trying to tackle outward migration too, using these new opportunities.
Yes, trying to keep the skilled workforce, remember that high literacy rate by creating jobs locally, like at the Pharma Hub.
There's also a mention of MG and REGA employment.
Just for context, yeah. Average of about 27 days per household in FY 23-24, part of the broader employment picture.
So the overall economic outlook presented is promising.
That's the word used, promising, driven by these factors. But the report stresses, we need to watch if the investment in jobs actually materialize as planned.
Okay, let's zoom in specifically on tourism then. The report really hammers this home as central.
It does. Back to that 1997 tourism district status. It's framed as a significant catalyst for real estate development.
And the range of attractions is pretty wide, isn't it?
Yeah, the report lists everything. Famous beaches like Tarkarli, obviously. Forts. Sindhudurg Fort is the big one. Apparently gets 70% of visitors, which causes some pressure there.
Right.
Then Vijaydurg Fort. Temples, waterfalls like Amboli, the marine sanctuary, scuba diving, Sawantwadi toys for culture, even potential for agri-tourism with mangoes and cashews.
It's a lot to offer. The report mentions the pandemic hit footfall pretty hard, though.
Big time. From maybe 1.2, 1.4 million visitors a year pre-pandemic down to an estimated 170, 200,000 in 2022. So recovery is key.
And the government strategy seems geared towards that. Big targets in the new tourism policy.
Very ambitious. That 2024 policy talks about attracting 100,000 crore rupees in private investment, creating 1.8 million jobs, doubling tourist numbers over 10 years. Huge goals.
How are they planning to achieve that? Schemes like Swadesh Darshan.
Yeah, the first phase coastal circuit project is done. Now, Swadesh Darshan 2.0 is described as a detailed master plan. It's about branding, unique experiences, infrastructure, supporting local businesses, sustainability.
And identifying opportunities for private partnerships.
Exactly, for developing beaches, forts, eco-lodges. MTDC, the state tourism body, is promoting things like scuba diving. But there's also an emphasis on, balancing growth, keeping it sustainable, preserving the local Konkani lifestyle.
They even mention specific zoning, like exclusive tourism zones.
Right, the T5 zone is mentioned,
Yeah.
directing where tourism development should happen.
And some innovative projects are highlighted too, like sinking a warship.
Yeah, the INS Goldar project near Navadi Rocks, estimated 20 crore rupees. The idea is to create India's first major artificial reef, specifically for scuba diving.
That's pretty cool.
And to make it accessible for non-divers too, they're planning a 22-seater submersible, like a mini submarine. Another 50 crore estimated cost for that.
Wow. Okay, so these unique attractions naturally create demand for
Real estate, hospitality basically, hotels, resorts, homestays. The report notes local entrepreneurs are already jumping in with water parks, glass-bottom boats, things like that.
And the government plans explicitly mention PPP opportunities for higher-end stuff.
Yep, high-end hospitality, eco-lodges, houseboats. The sources see demand coming for luxury resorts, wellness retreats, dive resorts tied to the INS Goldar project. They also point out gaps, not enough luxury options currently, and homestays need better standardization.
So the tourism strategy is directly shaping real estate demand for specific types of properties.
Absolutely.
Which brings us squarely to the real estate landscape itself. How is the market changing, according to the report?
It describes a real shift, moving away from just being about farming or fishing towards these new drivers. And significantly, it's not just individuals selling plots anymore. Organized developers are coming in with larger projects.
Which suggests more investor confidence.
That's the interpretation, yes. Growing confidence.
And the price trends reflect that. We touched on the 25–40% appreciation.
Right. Linked strongly to MOP and other infrastructure. One projection even isolates the MOP effect at around 27.8%.
But it's not uniform across the whole district.
No, definitely not. The report is clear. Appreciation varies a lot by location. Movan, Sawantwadi, Kudal, Vingurla, they all have slightly different dynamics. Kudal, for instance, is projected to see maybe 22–23% annual growth in land prices for the next few years. So it's localized.
And the rental market?
Also looking strong. The report mentions an average rental yield of 7.2%.
Which is pretty good compared to other second home spots.
Apparently so.
Mm.
Driven by tourism, obviously, but also this workation trend, people wanting to work remotely from nice locations.
So the demand drivers are pretty clear. Tourism, infrastructure, lifestyle escaping the city, wellness focus. Plus rental income potential, hope for capital growth.
Comparative affordability, especially versus going next door. And just the general local economic growth sparking housing needs.
What types of properties are people looking for?
It's quite varied. Raw lands is still popular. Low-rise homes, villas. Second homes are big gated villas, farmhouses, service departments, often in planned townships. Plotted developments are also in demand.
So buying a plot within a managed project.
Exactly. Plus regular apartments for different budgets. And then those niche tourism places, eco-resorts, dive resorts, even commercial spaces for shops and restaurants catering to tourists. Agricultural land, too, sometimes with an eye on potential future conversion.
And buyers want modern amenities.
Yeah, they expect a certain standard now, often a resort-like feel, even in residential projects.
What about the supply side? Are developers keeping up?
The report says inventory is growing. You've got established developers moving in alongside the local builders. And the increase in RERA registration suggests the market is becoming more formalized and transparent.
Okay, but navigating this market, it involves dealing with regulations, especially environmental ones, right? The report flags this as complex.
Very complex. It's a crucial piece of the puzzle. How do you manage the development responsibly?
Land governance seems key. Efforts to digitize records, like GVONT 712 and the integration with ISARITA.
Yes, all aimed at making land titles clearer, which, as we said, is vital for attracting serious investment. Land consultants are apparently important guides through this process.
But the environmental rules are major hurdles, or maybe filters, especially CRZ.
Definitely filters. Coastal regulation zone rules are strict because, well, it's the coast. The report mentions recent changes giving local bodies more say on smaller projects, but the main coastal zone management plans are still being finalized.
Public hearings held, recommendations made, but final approval pending.
Seems so, based on the sources. And those CRZ rules really dictate what and where you can build near the sea. It's a huge factor.
And then there's the eco-sensitive area designation for parts of the district, Western Ghats.
Right. That limits certain types of development, too. Prohibits large projects above certain sizes, bans highly polluting red category industries. It's meant to push towards more sustainable development.
Like the Adali Pharma Hub, focusing on non-polluting industries.
Exactly. That's presented as an example of fitting development within those ESA guidelines.
Plus the broader district regional plan and those specific tourism zones guiding things. And bodies like MHADEA involved in housing.
It's a whole framework.
Yeah.
And the report keeps coming back to the need to balance the growth push with protecting the environment. It acknowledges the complexity, but frames the regulations as essential.
So let's pull this together into the investment outlook. The report paints a picture that's compelling but complicated.
That sums it up well. You see the evidence of strong appreciation, those good rental yields. It looks attractive.
And the sources point to specific opportunities, like getting an early new infrastructure.
Yeah, early mover advantage. Also niche tourism properties, second homes for rental, sustainable or eco-friendly projects, land banking, plotted developments, ancillary services too, things supporting tourism or new residents.
But then there are the risks. What does the report highlight there?
A fair few. Market volatility is one. Is some of this price boom speculative? Will it last? Infrastructure bottlenecks are another. Not the big highways, but things like reliable water supply, internet, the last mile access. NABARD apparently flagged some of these.
Practical issues that matter a lot for tourism and second homes.
Absolutely. Then the complexity of environmental rules causing delays or limiting projects, the actual environmental pressure from development if it's not managed well, lingering land title issues despite the digitization efforts.
Climate change risks for coastal properties too.
Mentioned as well. Plus, execution risk. Can these big projects actually be delivered on time and budget? Challenges with terrain, labor availability are noted, and potential social issues making sure local communities accept and benefit from the changes.
So construction itself can be tricky there.
Primarily so.
But overall, the feeling, especially for second homes and tourism real estate, is still optimistic.
Largely optimistic, yes, but tempered by the need for sustainability and careful navigation of all these complexities. It's not a blanket buy anywhere situation. It's about targeted opportunities.
And the report emphasizes understanding the local context, the regulations.
Doing your homework, essentially. Recognizing that sustainable practices and thoughtful planning are probably key to unlocking the real long-term value.
The report also makes a point of identifying the key players, the stakeholders involved in this whole transformation.
Right, because it doesn't happen in a vacuum. It breaks them down into roughly 3 groups.
Okay, who are they?
First, government and regulatory bodies, MIDC, the environmental ministries, coastal authorities, tourism departments, registration, housing bodies like MHIDIA, NABARD, Survey of India, basically the ones setting the rules, providing data, regulating.
Got it. Group 1. Government and regulators.
Second, corporations and developers. The companies building the roads like IRB, airlines like FLY91, big hospitality players like Taj, maybe the Delton Group if they're involved near MOP, the port developers, and then all the other real estate developers, local builders, entrepreneurs, the supply side.
Okay. Group 2. Builders and businesses.
And third is just people. Various groups, tourists, obviously, investors from cities, second home buyers, retirees, NRIs, but also the local population, the workforce, farmers, landowners, fishing communities, and then public representatives, citizens involved in planning. They're the demand, the workforce, the impacted communities.
A wide range.
It is, and the report stresses the interplay between all these groups. It's not just top-down plans or bottom-up demand. Success depends on coordination, on balancing the interests of developers, government, and the local communities.
So making sure growth is sustainable and inclusive.
That's the underlying message, yeah.
All right. So looking back over this deep dive into the report you shared, we've traced Sindhudurg's path from being marked as a tourism spot way back to now being in the middle of this massive transformation.
A transformation really fueled by that wave of infrastructure, airports, highways, ports, plus specific policies, and a clear surge in investment, especially aimed at tourism and real estate.
And the outlook presented is definitely exciting in terms of growth potential. We saw the numbers on property appreciation, rental yields.
We're sure. Promising potential.
But, and it's big but, the report highlights that potential is tangled up with real complexities. Risk is around market bubbles, environmental sustainability being a huge one, and ensuring the local population actually benefits broadly.
That classic development versus preservation tension playing out right there.
Yeah. And as this infrastructure keeps getting better, as more money flows in, the report really leaves you thinking, how do you ensure that the very things attracting people, the natural beauty, the beaches, the marine life, and the traditional ways of life aren't lost in the rush?
What does sustainable prosperity actually look like in a place like Sindhudurg?
Exactly. It's a critical question, definitely something to mull over.
Indeed.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the Sindhudurg report.
Thank you. It was interesting to unpack.